Hi everyone, this is Vili and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition. Our guest today is Adonia Calhoun Groom, Executive Director at the Renal Physicians Association. She's a DELP alumni and I have the privilege to connect with her a couple of times before today. So I look forward to the conversations. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Adonia.
Hi, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Sure. I am Adonia Calhoun Groom, and I am the Executive Director of the Renal Physicians Association. I've been with my organization for a little over 17 months, and it's been a great journey thus far.
So in the last 17 months, what is
Mhm.
the one thing that you've learned and you appreciate the most during your experience here?
I think just being open to learning new things. I worked in medical organizations for just about all of my career, and I was new to the specialty of kidney when I came to this organization. So I came in with my leadership background and a broad range of skills from my association career, but learning the topic of kidney and all aspects of what that means for this organization has definitely been a journey for me, a very positive journey. I've had to do a lot to get up to speed to be able to effectively tackle the needs of this organization.
I'm hearing that you are an association executive entering a professional organization. You don't have the technical background to that professions and to what the members are doing. You bring in the wealth of knowledge within association management to contribute to the running of the organizations.
Mm-hmm.
With that sort of context, what are a few things that we need to consider when we are thinking about entering that sort of new realm?
I think the biggest thing to consider is to always be open and always be willing to stretch yourself. If you have the foundation and the skills that are required to manage the general aspects of the role, the other things can be taught or can be learned. I now can say I have professional and personal connections to kidney disease. So I've just remained open to learning, being willing to soak up as much as I can, having critical conversations, not being afraid to ask when I don't understand something. I think that's the biggest thing. So many of us live in, fear of, oh, if I don't know this, then people are going to think I'm not prepared or I'm not qualified. And I don't see it that way at all. I secured this role, so I know I'm qualified, but learning is a continuous journey. And so you have to remain open and be willing to speak up when you're unsure and be okay with it too. Let me be clear. Be okay with being unsure. I think that's just important for me.
Do you have a practical example of be okay with being unsure and not afraid to ask? Is there a scenario that you can share with us?
Sure. I think in many medical organizations, if you're not a medical professional by training, there are acronyms, there are words that you're never going to fully understand. I'm like, what are they talking about? And so when I'm in conversations, when I'm in meetings, talking either to my leadership or our stakeholders or partners, when a word or something comes up that I don't fully understand, I'm like, can you explain that to me? Or can you go a little deeper on that so that I can gain the understanding and feel like I'm fully engaging in the conversation effectively? I would feel remiss if I just sat and listened and didn't understand. I mean, some things, of course, I'm able to figure out by nature of the discussion. But if I really feel that I can't follow the conversation effectively, I'm going to speak up and say something. And I think if you're in an environment where you're still trying to get up to speed or may not understand all aspects of the discussion, it can be daunting and it can fear. But I don't feel like that. I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't challenge myself to speak up and ask the question. And often I find that when I do ask these questions, there are other people who may have that same question or may be having a difficult time following as well. So I put myself out there. excuse me, I need a little help here. Can you answer this question for me or explain that further?
Thank you so much. Just one more question on this topic before we move on.
Mhm.
Do you have that assumed expectation or the pressure that you have to know everything being at the top of the organization?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think that you're a combination of what you know and the individuals you surround yourself with. I look to have the best and brightest leaders or co-pilots around me so that the ultimate goal is to move the organization forward and into the future. So I need to be willing to step outside of myself to either learn what I don't know or find the appropriate individuals to help me, to help support whatever we're doing. Because I think that you're only as good as the team you surround yourself with.
That's great. Thank you for giving me the context around how you show up at work.
Thank you.
So looking at your journey, and I'm hearing over 20, 25 years of experience.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow.
What is the one thing that you like the most about yourself in that journey?
I think is that I've always stayed inquisitive. I've always stayed hungry, not in a necessarily competitive way. I feel like my only competition and challenges are myself, but just always willing to stretch myself. I think that's so critically important that I didn't stay complacent. There were times in my career where I settled into certain roles and I was like, oh, I can do this. This is not necessarily easy, but I'm really good here. And I could spend a lot of time here. But then I found for myself, I won't say I got bored, but I felt like I always knew I could do more. And so I always challenge myself personally to not settle for just enough. If I'm settling, then I feel like I'm not growing. So I continually push myself. And I think how I've handled my entire career is when I've reached a certain point or ceiling, it's like, okay, well, what else can you do? And don't be afraid to do it. The other part of it is I think I've doubted myself more than other people have doubted me. I can honestly say that throughout my career, every role I've had a leader who was ahead of me who saw something in me and said, oh, you could do this, you could do so much more. I'm like, you sure you talking about me? This girl right here? And they would keep pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I guess that's a culmination of where I am now. But I recognize that the leadership qualities now in this role, they've always been in me. You know, how they've shown up in different roles, maybe grown over the years, but I've always had this ability to be a leader. And I think I'm finally getting to the stage that I'm starting to accept, okay, you are a leader. For a long time, I'm not a leader. I'm just a person doing this job. I do it pretty well, but I'm not a leader. And now it's like, okay, just accept it. You are a leader. You're not a leader who is free from error or growth or opportunity to continue to push yourself, but you are a leader. Just accept that word because it accurately applies to you now.
I have so many follow-up questions on this. Let's pick up from where you left.
Uh-huh.
I'm hearing that there were some triggers to make you realize that you are the leader. Can you share that defining moments for us?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say there is one specific moment. I guess it's really others who have signaled or expressed to me that I'm a leader that have helped me recognize that I am perceived and seen as a leader in my profession and in my career. I've just considered myself a person working incredibly hard to accomplish whatever my latest objective is for the organization I'm working with. But people around me, oh, you have this particular role, or, this is your job title, so you're a leader. And I'm like, that doesn't make me a leader. I don't think having a job title makes you a leader, but it is how you show up. And I think working with other individuals and people recognizing my positive attributes, and even if they're were areas where I could grow. I think having people acknowledge my leadership capabilities or, you know, leadership, quote unquote, status, I think that's what really allowed me to finally accept that, you are where you are. It's okay to acknowledge and accept it because I also think I'm humble and I don't like to subscribe to titles. I'm just Adonia doing the job that I've been given to the best of my ability.
So I'm hearing you say that you accepting that you are a leader a couple of times. Can you
Yes.
describe how do you get to that moment of acceptance or the process, or were there background stories around that?
I think it's just recognizing the level of responsibility that you've been given.
Okay.
And that's really, I would say, is how I accepted it. When you recognize that you're responsible for a certain budget, when you're responsible for individuals' success or failures, you're responsible for the movement, the growth, or the change within the organization you're connected to. I think that's really what helped set the pace for you are a leader. You have an incredible responsibility. Take it seriously, acknowledge the responsibility, and then go forward.
Earlier in this conversation, you talk about the sense of complacence, a point where you know that you can do more.
Mhm.
I want to flip that conversations a little bit, and I want to ask, at that particular point,
Mhm.
what do you feel that stopped you from doing more?
I don't know if I ever stopped doing more, but I recognized that I had, for lack of a better word, mastered what I was doing. And it became routine. And when it became routine and I felt like I was fully capable and it stopped becoming a stretch to do something, that's when I sought growth in other areas. I feel like I should always be stretching myself in some way. And when I'm not, then I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice.
Thank you. I want to wrap up this segment of the conversation. So I start identifying some symptoms or some cue when we know that we are getting into the complacent place.
Mhm.
That's when we feel that we are not challenged enough. We haven't stretched ourselves enough. Everything get into a routine. There is no more excitement. There is no more new things we feel that we could have done. And that's when we need to relook at where we are at and do some assessment. Is that a good way to wrap up this sense of complacence?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap it up.
Cool. Thank you for your wisdom here. I'm so intrigued.
Thank you for considering your wisdom.
Now, I want to move to the mantra conversations, and this is one of my favorite segments.
Okay.
As a CEO of the organizations, what is your mantra and how do you show up with that mantra?
This is a difficult question. I would say my mantra is empowerment and collaboration. It's important to me to lead a team through collaboration. I'm one person in a sea of collaborative minds, voices, and leaders trying to move my organization forward. So my goal and role is always to empower those around me to be their best, to think at the highest level, and to also stretch themselves to move forward, whatever the goal we have in front of us.
Is there a story that you can share with us on how do you empower those around you to be the best?
At my current organization, I have a leadership team of 5 individuals, and having us come together regularly to discuss whatever the latest challenge or initiative happening in our organization, trying to move us into collaborative or group thought and brainstorming and problem solving is something that I think this team has done well in the past. I don't think they've done it as frequently and as often in this model that I am creating for this organization, but really trying to bring everyone together to pull us into a collaborative group. I think that they've always worked well together, but we've had some, in certain instances, some silos. And so just trying to get the group to work as a more collective and collaborative group.
There are a lot of literature about different model of collaborations. Can you elaborate how yours look like?
I think it's bringing us together, setting a tone for open discussion. There are no wrong answers. Everyone is valuable. Everyone deserves and is qualified to be at the table. Just entrusting people to bring forth their best and brightest thoughts and determining how we're moving the organization forward.
I'm hearing that you invested your effort into building the culture of the organizations.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to establish a culture of collaboration. It always starts at the top. Culture starts at the top. And I'm fortunate to inherit an incredibly strong team. So building that culture, I think it takes time, but I also think it takes dedicated effort and consistency.
So say we are trying to establish a culture of collaboration, what is the one thing that we should not be doing? What should we be mindful of, or what should we be staying away from when we want to foster this culture?
Assuming that, one, coming into an organization that's been established for some time and a team that's established, every opportunity, every time, and I just learned this recently in a meeting, but every time you bring in a new factor into a team, you've essentially created a new team. And recognizing that every time we make a change in scope of work or the discussion or the project, you're essentially creating a different dynamic within that team. And even with culture, and understanding the culture of how people respond and behave in one circumstance may be different in another situation. Therefore, I think you always have to just be willing to stay the course. If you're clear, that's the other part. You have to be clear on the shifts you want to create. Like, I know for a fact, I want to create a collaborative team approach to how we do things at the organization. And because of that, yes, you have to pivot. So I think what you do is you continually be open and you pivot. What you don't do is get stuck in one place and one plan for how you're going to impact culture. People change, projects change, your teams change. And so you always have to be willing to change. But the general overall overarching theme can remain the same. But you have to be willing to do the work to change within that for any given scenario.
Thank you for elaborating that. Let's move to the second part of the conversations about the keyword that you selected.
Okay.
You select a special one today. Can you share with us a little more of why you select that word and what that means for you?
Yeah, I selected authenticity, of course, for humans of authenticity. But I selected authenticity because I believe that's how I show up in every circumstance. I try to be myself at every opportunity and everywhere I go. I am completely okay with being a work in progress. I am completely okay with not being perfect. I'm completely okay with being wrong, because I think what I'm not going to do is not be willing to acknowledge a challenge or an error. What I am going to do is continue to push myself every day to become the best version of myself, whether that's in my family, whether that's in my work environment, whether that's in my friend circle, whether that's with my extended family. It's important to me that I show up and be comfortable with who I am.
Being a Black executive in this environment, I'm hearing a lot of courage, a lot of fearless from your responses, and I'm hearing a lot of acceptance that you are okay for not being perfect, okay for being wrong. How do you get the courage to deal with all of that?
The external forces. I think as a Black executive, there's always recognition that when I show up, there are people who fully acknowledge and appreciate my leadership. And there are also times when people are not so appreciative or shocked. I've been in many rooms where I show up with my team members who may not be a person of color, and the assumption is that I'm the assistant or I'm the support staff. Okay, I don't feel the need to justify who I am to anyone. I know what I am. I know what qualities and qualifications I bring to every situation. And so I remember that first, and I'll allow everything else to fall where they may. I'm comfortable speaking up for myself when I need to, but I don't always feel the need to have to justify someone's deficiencies to prove who I am. I know who I am. And I think that's where authenticity and my comfort comes from. There are challenges, and I think any executive of color will tell you that there are definitely challenges where there are moments where you might feel there is a need to have to prove or speak up to a certain degree, but I've just learned that I am who I am. And for that reason, I'm not going to necessarily lower my sense of security or sense of self to accommodate someone else's, challenges or inabilities.
I'm loving how you wrap it up in that sense of security. Can you share your journey of how you build up your muscle so that you can be that confident?
It's an ongoing journey. I'm not always confident. I deal with an incredible amount of fear when I don't know things. It's always scary. When I don't know, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Well, what am I going to do? But I just regroup. Okay, you don't know. Are you going to live in that fear of the unknown, or are you going to try to work to figure it out? And I've learned that, yeah, fear is natural and fear is okay. Staying in that fear is not okay. You have to find a way to move forward. And that's what I do. I continually find ways to move forward, but it's natural. And anyone who says it's not, I believe, they're lying to themselves.
Is there a story that you can share with us? I'm interested in a particular point where you say staying in fear is not okay. If I am so overwhelmed by all the fear, imposter syndrome sometimes come into the picture. How do you get out of that mode?
I think you just remember who you are. You remember how you got in the situation that you're in, or how the challenge that you're trying to face was presented to you. And then you work through it. And I think about my journey to the CEO position. Yeah, I didn't see myself, and it was never my dream, so to speak, to be a CEO. Some people, they start early on in their lives. This is my goal. And until you achieve it, they don't consider themselves successful. This was not my dream. However, it became my journey through my growth and development over the years. And I'm happy to be in this role. I love what I do, but yeah, the first time I stepped into this role, it was terrifying. Recognizing and accepting that so much responsibility was going to rest on my shoulders. A good part of the success, or at least the operational success of an organization, was mine to oversee. That's terrifying. The budgets are put in front of you to manage. It's a lot of money. It was money I don't have. So the thought of having to manage it was scary. But I remembered, well, the CEO process is not easy. You've gone through many rounds of assessment along with other peers in this profession who are equally or maybe even more qualified than you to sit in this role. And the organization decided you were the person they felt who could best lead them forward. And for that reason, I recognize that, and I accept that that is how I work through the fear. And I think whether it's a CEO role, an admin role, a manager role, a mid-level director role, just accepting that if you're in the role, someone believed you could do it. So yeah, reflect and move forward.
I really admire your courage and bravery in sharing that story. And I
Thank
love how
you.
you give you that space to be a bit vulnerable and talk about
Yeah.
your fears. That is absolutely important for us to reflect and then move on from there. Looking at your entire journey,
Mhm.
have you seen yourself evolve or transform from, let's say, the first 90 days within your career until today? I know that we've learned and we grow professionally, but if we look at the core values and the core belief, have you seen any significant evolve or transform?
Yeah, I think it's how I see the work that I do. I think that's the real transformation. And moving from being someone who's been assigned a task and being just accomplishing a task in front of me to thinking much more broadly, being more strategic, and having vision. Before, when I first started my career, it was okay, you do what is in front of you. Now it's okay, how does this impact the organization 6 months from now, a year from now? Everything that you do, you have to look at the impact it's going to have on the organization, not just for this particular moment, but down the line. So I think it's being much more visionary and strategic, and how I think that's really been the transformation. And that also applies to just being in a role. Like if I was to then drill down to what we talked about in this particular role, when you first come in, I think it's best to come into an organization to listen and learn. You can't come in and assume everything, because in a CEO process, you can do all the research, you can look at all the history of the organization, you can read all the data that they present or they give you access to, but that doesn't solve for what you experience when you're actually in the role. So I think those first 90 days are a critical space to listen, to learn, and only if absolutely necessary do you have to take any dramatic action, because you could be wrong. You jump into something with an assumption that's not proven or not challenged over time, and you find yourself making potentially a significant decision that could adversely impact the organization. So I think listening and learning is very critical.
I love how you also go back to the earlier of the conversations about open to learning new things and comfortable with asking questions and with saying that you don't know. I appreciate that. And I love how you also differentiate for us the mindset of a staff person compared to a C-suite executive. One is very task-oriented, focusing on the day-to-day activities, and the other one looking further into the future. We focus more about vision, strategy, and impacts.
Mhm.
Thank you for pointing that out for me.
No problem.
As the leader of the organization, how do you build an environment so that your team can feel comfortable showing up as who they are?
I think I'm vulnerable. I'm open and I'm honest, respectfully, of course. I don't come in and give the impression that if I don't know something, I can acknowledge it. As I said previously, I've been fortunate to inherit a team who's been at this organization much longer than I do. They have so much institutional knowledge about what has occurred in this organization over time, and I respect that knowledge. I don't use it as, okay, well, I'm new and I have a new vision and I have new thinking. No, I respect the journeys that they've been on and what they bring to the organization, as I still work to impart my own leadership or transformation. I think that is important to the organization's growth.
Thank you. Now I want to move to the last part of the conversations, and I'd love to hear the legacy that you are planning to leave with your organizations. Can you share that with us?
Sure, that I rocked it. That I came in, I showed up, and I did what was in front of me to the best of my ability, that I moved the needle for the organization I served. That whatever the change is that they were seeking, I did something to help move them in that direction. Some of it may be more action oriented or steps that may not be seen as the ultimate change, but if I've helped work them towards that change and move the needle within the organization, then I feel like I've done my role. change is hard. It is so hard for anyone, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader, whether you're a member. I think change is very hard. And if I can help any group work towards positive change, then I feel like I've been successful. Every challenge, you're not going to solve in a day. And so I think it's important to set your own lens for success and be willing to accept that maybe it's not the goal, because my goal is to change the world, of course. But that's a very difficult goal to accomplish in many settings. However, if I've changed minds, if I've changed what the trajectory of success is for an organization, if I've just improved upon something that the organization was challenged with, then I feel like I've been successful, because it comes in so many different ways, success.
Nice. You mentioned that you have moved the needles. Can you share or describe one of those needles with us?
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit. In a prior organization, just really growing the organization's revenue, growing the visibility of that organization, growing access to information and resources that our organization presented, being a part of critical discussions, being willing to speak up and even challenge the leaders that I've worked with to think not necessarily differently, but more broadly. I think all of those are ways that I've moved the needle in a positive direction. And I think getting people to think differently or more openly, that applies to my entire career. Coming in as a Black executive, there are often, not always, but often challenges in just that. And then as a woman being heard, you know, I can sit in a room and say the exact thing one of my counterparts says, and they didn't hear it from me, but they heard it from someone else. But that's okay. If my comments lead to the results that I think are best for the organization, then I accept that. Not, that's kind of weird. I don't want to say accept. I appreciate the movement. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So what would happen to this legacy if you were to leave tomorrow?
Well, I would hope that whatever legacy I leave, it continues to keep the organization moving in a positive direction. And I feel like every place that I've been, each organization is still moving towards their goal. So my legacy is that I didn't taint the movement, but I helped support and ideally help contribute to significant success of whatever the organization is attempting to accomplish.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is that as part of your legacy, you also put in place the infrastructure, communicating the vision so that your team can continue bringing everything forward. So it's the impact that you leave behind the organizations, which is one of the things that you've mentioned earlier, vision, strategy, and impact.
Yes.
I'm loving how everything just coming together to
it plays together. Well, that's kind of how authenticity works. You don't always realize that, you know, as you're bringing up and summarizing, I'm like, oh yeah, I did, you know, it all comes together in the end, but it comes together because it's honest. And it's just me being who I am. I think the most significant thing you can do in any situation, no matter where you are in your career, is just be who you are. Be confident in who you are and accept what you can't change. Well, except if I think there is an opportunity for growth or change, I may just table change. And saying that, it just made me think that a very important thing is to never accept good enough if you fully believe there could be more, or think that there could be a bigger impact, or you could better serve, or the organization could grow differently. Acknowledge when there is a challenge and the hurdles that you may face, but don't accept that something is what it is. You have to plan appropriately, and you have to restructure how you attempt to accomplish that change. You don't have to abandon it.
Yeah. If we write down our goals, then we increase the likelihood of achieving them. So when you say that you table the change, I'm hearing that you start planning for the change. I love how you proactively planning your next step ahead as well. And again, to me, that's the vision sort of mindset of a C-suite executive.
Yeah.
So we have 2 questions left until the end of
Okay.
the episode. And I hope you will have fun with these too. Now, imagine if your organization were a fictional character, who would it be and why?
It's a difficult question. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good fictional character. I don't know. It's hard. I'm just trying to think of a fictional character. I don't know. That's a hard one. It's weird because the only thing popping into my head right now is really random is Jim, this cartoon I used to watch as a kid. It called Jim and the Holograms. And in the theme song of the show was like, Jim is truly outrageous. Truly, truly, truly outrageous. I don't think my organization is outrageous in any way. But what was exciting or what I really enjoyed about that show is that there was always a challenge. There was always something to solve in that show. There was always a mystery. You're always pushing and trying to fight for relevance and acknowledgement. In my organization, they're an organization of incredibly passionate professionals. We're always fighting for the high quality and optimal delivery of care in service to patients with kidney disease. So for me, I don't even know how that relates to Jim, but yeah, I know, but that was the first thing that came to my head. And I have no idea why. That is so random for me
That's
that
okay. It's a conversation in the moment. I appreciate that.
yeah.
So the last question to follow up on that. So as
Okay.
a CEO, how will you ensure that your organization become the hero of its own story?
By continuing to remain open, continuing to focus on strategy, continuing to have a vision, then, scanning what's happening in this environment and around it, always looking to be open to growth and change. And it goes back, it's very basic to me. I don't feel like there's a magic wand, but I feel like success is based in the people who are contributing to it and ensuring that we have the best people and the best minds at the table who are truly bringing a diverse set of skills and mindsets to the table, who have their pulse on what's happening in and around that organization, then I feel like that's how I'm going to continue to move this organization into the future.
Nice. Thank you so much for closing the interview with that very inspirational caption. This is the end of the episode, and thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. My name is Adonia Calhoun Groom, and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition.